have you ever noticed how we keep telling ourselves AI is magic and cyber risk is a future problem, right up until the time it walks in the front door wearing a name badge? Because in this episode, we're not talking about Hollywood hackers or hoodie cliches. We're talking about how attacks actually happen now, quietly, through vendors you forgot you hired, through AI tools your employees are already using, through people who don't break in or hack, they log in. Why is it that everyone thinks they need to build Fort Knox when it comes to cybersecurity, when attackers are just looking for the unlocked side door? I sit down with global CISO, well-respected Dan Elliott from Recorded Future, and you'll hear stories never published before. Real-world examples of how threat actors actually think, hunt, and choose their targets, and why waiting for regulation or insurance to save you is the adult version of closing your eyes and believing the monster isn't staring right in front of you. Watch this all the way through. It's excellent, not because it's scary, because once you see how it actually works, you can't unsee it. This is Cybercrime Junkies, and now the show. Welcome, everybody, to Cybercrime Junkies. I am your host, David Morrow. In the studio today is Dan Elliott. Dan is a field CISO, Chief Information Security Officer, focused on Asia Pacific and Japan at Recorded Future, where he helps businesses and security leaders turn real-world threat intelligence into decisions that actually reduce risk. Recorded Future, for those who may not know, is a globally respected threat intelligence company that basically connects the dots of the open web, the dark web, technical sources, customer telemetry, so teams can spot and prioritize these threats faster. Dan, sir, welcome to the studio. Welcome back. Hope you've been well.
I've been doing fantastic. It's an absolute pleasure to be back. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, I am excited about hearing what you're doing for Recorded Future. Share what you can. I'm nothing confidential, but share what you're you left Zurich. Are you still, your home abode is still in Australia? You were in Canada when I first met you. Your home abode is still in Australia, but yet you're covering all of the Pacific.
That is correct. So still the Canadian in Australia, left Zurich. You know, I'll say the opportunities in one's career are often the ones you don't predict and you don't expect. The opportunity came about with Recorded Future, and I think I've always been an evangelist for cyber threat intelligence. So it was that I referred to that ikigai, that, you know, Japanese concept of doing something you love, something the world needs, and it's just been a perfect fit. So I spend most of my time traveling and speaking to CISOs, not just Recorded Future clients, but CISOs across the region and around the globe, to discuss where they're looking to go with their organization, the challenges they're having, and where cyber threat intelligence sits within their program, within their ecosystem.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And you do a lot of public speaking. For those who may not know Dan, if you're a fan of the show, you would know Dan. But definitely check out all your work on LinkedIn. You publish a lot, and it's really good content. You also have very relatable stories. You're one of my favorite storytellers, and I always appreciate that, because I think all of this is about what resonates with people. And so being able to make it edutainment, right? Like being able to educate people in a fun way and a relatable way is it's both an art and a skill.
Thank you very much. Very generous compliment. I have a lot of fun doing it. And I think that cyber gets the bad rap of being too technical and a concept that...
Or the Department of No, right? Like, you can't do that. We can't. We're not allowed to do that. We can't use that app. We can't do that.
And I think that if we, I mean, I love analogies. Most people want to be able to drive a car. Not everybody has to be a mechanic in order to do so. So I think that our job is to make it driving, to give people the opportunity where they can sit behind the wheel, they can feel somewhat in control without expecting all business leaders to act as mechanics.
So Dan, before we talk, I have a few questions about AI and the advancements in social engineering. Before we get there, let's talk about analogies.
Yes.
So, Bear in the Woods, one of my favorite analogies. And then you moved to Australia and you shared in our last conversation the shark in the water. And I steal everything from you. I hope you know that. I use that all the time. And I've gotten so much feedback from people that were like, the shark in the water, I understand what you're saying now. Like, can you share that for the listeners who may not have heard those prior episodes?
Sure.
It's really about the concept of you don't need to build Fort Knox in order to improve yourself as an organization or personally protecting online, correct?
Correct. I think that, and I slowly build on all these analogies as I go along.
Are you going to come up with a new one now that you record a future? Is there like a fish one because it's Pacific? Like, is there like a sushi one or something like that? Maybe we'll have to think about that. We'll noodle on.
We'll get there. I mean, so the concept of both shark in the water and bear in the woods is the same, which is roughly the concept that, and I learned the shark in the water when I came out here, which is I get a lot of locals that say there's certain times of day you obviously don't swim because that's when sharks are out hunting. And if you think of the shark as the hacker, as the criminal who's out there looking, there's certain places that they hunt. But for those of us who are operating outside of that window, you don't have to be an Olympic swimmer. And the bear in the woods, you don't have to be an Olympic athlete to run from the bear, but you have to do enough that you're not the furthest one out, you're not the closest one to the bear. And I always tell people now that for me, understanding threat intelligence is taking the blindfold off and understanding your environment in the water. I do a lot now across Asia and steal a concept from my old world in the intelligence community, which was that concept that along a nation's perimeter, if you're afraid of your neighbor attacking you, you can stick soldiers end to end and have everybody stand one beside each other and use that as your guard post to tell where somebody's attacking from. It's not efficient. And when an attacker comes in, you got one guy there. I think
right. It's not deep either. Right. Yeah.
That's it. And threat intelligence, whether it's cyber threat intel or my old world, human and human intelligence, is the concept that I want to bring the resources to the right places. It's not about more resources, it's about efficiency, bringing resources to the spot where attackers are most likely to be. And you'll never be 100% accurate, but you can be more accurate and more efficient. So intelligence brings your resources to that point on the border where you're most likely at risk. And it's the same in the water. In Australia here, they have shark sensors. So they can tell people where the sharks are most likely to be and to be hunting, so you can avoid that.
And in the analogy of the armament on the border, right, you don't want to do the thin line all the way around your border. It's not efficient and it's not deep. You want to know where they're coming at the time they're coming so that you have all of your army or a vast majority of it in that location.
Yep. And I think that threat intel often gets labeled as an add-on. And the problem with that concept is it's, okay, I still have to have a soldier everywhere, but then I'll get extra soldiers in the spots where threat intel tells me to be. Whereas if you start from the intelligence space, then you're building an efficient army that has depth at scale in the right places. It's the same way governments do it. I've seen governments go through deficit reductions in multiple decades. And the one thing that they never scaled back on was intelligence. I think that whatever analogy you want to draw from, it's that idea that we need to build efficient security programs so that we can actually protect ourselves and our resources.
Yep. And when we think about shark in the water, I have a couple of stats for you. Mako shark, somebody sees fins. We don't know if it's a dolphin or shark. We're not going to stick around and find out. We're going to swim to shore. The bottom line is we will never be able to really outswim the shark, but we don't have to. And that's the good news of the story. We just have to outswim that guy. right? We just have to outswim somebody else who's closer to the shark, right? And the beauty of it is, a mako shark can swim 45 miles an hour. A great white can swim on average around 20, 25 miles an hour. The fastest human Olympic gold swimmer that swam was measured at 8 miles an hour. So I'm not going to outswim any of them, right? Just like online, I'm not going to defeat a hacker. But the point is, I need to do enough resistance so that they move on to the people still using password for their password, admin for their password, etc. Right? And that's really a great lesson for a lot of people, because it's good news. It's not just fear, uncertainty, and doubt.
Yes.
So
I think
let's
that,
segue. Go ahead.
from there,
Tell me.
I would say so many people that believe that they personally or organizationally, they don't have the maturity to handle cybersecurity. And I think that's a great point. I have close friends down here that say they grew up being told, go swimming in the ocean, just don't be the furthest one out, and
Right.
no matter how mature your organization is, you don't have to be the fastest. You don't have to be the most secure. You have to make your organization secure enough that for your size, for your scale, for your industry, threat actors just don't want to bother with you.
Right. Go swimming next to the guy who just finished a cheeseburger while he's walking out into the water. You're like, I'm swimming by this guy.
That's
because that shark's getting him first. That's good. So let's talk about AI, and not the AI that everyone's talking about, because AI is ridiculous now, the conversation of it. I almost don't like bringing it up, because I was at a convention a couple months back and there was a fork. There's a product, there was a booth. They had a freaking fork and they were like, it's AI infused. It can track all this stuff. I'm like, why would I want that? Like, stop adding AI into everything. It doesn't need to be in everything. Like, it's ridiculous sometimes. Okay. I just wanted to say that. Now, how that's out there. Fork. Yeah, I need that fork. Just, I've got to do my data analytics, my business intelligence for what we're eating. But there's a lot of kind of new risks that for those of us that like to spread awareness, right? Like, look at, we're the Jerry Seinfeld of like cybersecurity. We're like, did you ever notice this? Like, we're just like observational humor. Like what's shocking to me is obviously AI deepfakes and stuff. They're fascinating because they're not that big in terms of the percentage that they have involved in social engineering and phishing yet, but it's growing. It's growing massively percentage wise, but it's still not a big threat in terms of how common it is. That gap seems like it's going to widen, but I'm going to ask you about that in just a second. But to me, so many of the small to mid-sized organizations have kind of just sat back and watched a little while this generational technology, takes over. And that is inaction. That inaction is a decision. And that's causing a very big rise in shadow AI. What are you seeing? What are you advising people on shadow AI?
So first, if we take it back a half step and kind of describe what shadow AI is.
That's what I should
in the space. So shadow AI to me is the use of artificial intelligence that's ungoverned, unmanaged by your organization. And that's a huge swath of use cases.
Right. ABC company, the executive team doesn't have an AI policy because they haven't made a decision what to use, what department they would use it in, how to implement it. And so somebody's using this in their department, somebody's using a free version of this, someone's using a different version of something else, and there's no training of them. That is kind of where a large rise. There was a recent report, I don't know if it was from Axios or whomever, but it surveyed, a couple 100,000 US employees, and the results were somewhere in the 70% or higher range of those people anonymously said, yeah, I use AI and my employers don't know it.
Yeah. The last
very
I heard
scary.
Was 77% by
that's what I saw. Yeah, that's what I saw. Yeah.
Employees are going to use it regardless. And it wasn't even just, I mean, it's not malicious. It's this notion that regardless of what my employer says, I'm going to be using AI tools. I don't think that's necessarily wrong. And I'll draw that back a bit because I think everybody's at fault. Organizations ask for efficiency, they ask for scale. And, I have yet to be in an organization in the public or private sector that doesn't want efficiency and scale. That's profitability.
Right.
So
Yeah.
employees are
Absolutely.
driven down that road. And I think that AI is about automation. It's about getting to better answers more efficiently or getting processes done in an automated and an autonomous fashion. That's the ideal space. And organizational leaders that believe that our organization's not using AI are fooling themselves. I think that whether it's through, back channels like Slack or Microsoft tools or Google, they're all using AI. It's what they're doing with it. And if we move it on to more forward tools like, large language models like Claude and ChatGPT, I mean, those are more overt and those are the ones being talked about. But AI is across our environments. And it becomes a beholden on an organization to look at the rules. And I think they're easy 3 to 5 pieces that any organization at any scale can step into. But I think it's important for an organization to get out in front because that 77%, I would even say, is on the low end. I think it's more
I
likely
would
that
agree.
8, 9 out of 10 employees are going to say, I understand AI. The company wants me to be more efficient. If I can
Hmm.
get this job done in 6 hours and be more profitable, why am I working 8 at a less
Right.
profitable rate? So it can be malicious, but I think more often than not, it's just employees
I
wanting
think
to get
more
more
often
done.
than not, it's either driven out of their own fear because they're afraid that their competitors, whether it's internal competitors, right, they're up for a promotion against somebody. They want to be as competitive as possible, or it's well intended, right? I just want to do better at what I'm doing, right, and it's faster. The results overall are outstanding, right? I use it every
Yeah,
day.
and
Like it's phenomenal.
it's
Yeah,
great.
it's wonderful. But there's a risk, right? Because I'm still surprised how many I meet with when we're doing these awareness trainings that are like, we don't have an AI policy. We didn't even and one environment was a healthcare environment. And here in the US we have HIPAA regulations. And they had nurses that were working at 3 o'clock in the morning, uploading medical records, getting the summaries done because they don't have time and they just had to do it. Nobody had showed them you have to select a HIPAA compliant platform to use so that it's sandboxed, and you have to anonymize your data because there's still like the minimum necessity rule and other rules within that. But the point is I know that's a specific example, but that's a good sample of part of the reason of not having a policy and not articulating and communicating with employees is now you have people that are trying to do their best with good intent, but you're not training, you're not providing prompt training, you're not providing guardrails on how they can use this beast of a machine safely, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that in that example, you hit probably 3 of my 5 rules
Of
when
the five.
we talked about it, and it's
What are
that,
they? Like give me
yeah.
your five guidelines. Like let's walk through those.
So I think as an organization, you have to establish your broad guardrails, and that's your AI policies. What AI tools do we want to accept, and what do we not want to accept? And once you get a broad AI policy in place to determine that, you have to train your employees as to why. Why do we have these guardrails? What is AI? Why do we want to use it? Why do we not want to use it? And you can't blanket this. This isn't like all AI is allowed, no AI is allowed. You can't get into all or nothing. And I think it's about making training specific, role specific. I have seen organizations that do general AI training or point their employees to some of those large organizations that offer AI training. That's okay as a starter, but I think organizationally we have to look at role-based training. So how would HR use AI tools? How would operations use AI tools? How is our marketing department using AI tools? And so that they understand the guardrails for their role, and they understand the use cases for their role. And those are the three that I think you hit the nail on the head on right there. We have to that training for that nursing staff. They want to use the tool. They don't necessarily understand which tools they're allowed to use or why they aren't able to use them from a regulatory perspective, and then they don't
from
have
a
the whole
governance
specific.
from a governance stance. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I think there has to be then an ability to flow with it for an organization, whether from a security position, IT, or leadership, so that we can monitor and we can move with it. I mean, I see security is moving in the direction of AI enabled, security posture, autonomous threat posture, but you can't do that unless you're constantly growing, you're constantly iterating through it. And I think
Right.
that's a piece that is left with a lot of risk doctrine. We do one and done. You write a policy, you walk away. It doesn't have to change for another
Right.
5 years. When it comes to AI policy, this is a constantly iterative process. I think that's really important as well.
So the five, I covered the three. The fourth is the security visibility into
Yeah. So
the
making sure
results of
that
their
you
use
have
of it,
tools.
right?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah. And
what's the
you have
fifth?
to be able to watch.
How would you state the
The
fifth?
fifth is that iteration. So all
Makes
four of those
sense.
items, you have to iterate. You have to not just have a process for overall governance, for training, for role-based, and for security, but you also have to have a process in there to iterate all four. And it has to
Right.
work alongside everybody's process.
That's absolutely wonderful. That's fantastic.
We try.
Yeah, no, that's very helpful. That's exactly what I'm seeing. I just haven't articulated it in those five guardrails. So once again, great story, great way of looking at it. What are you seeing for guiding organizations in your new role? What are the latest concerns? What all has changed this year from last? Is it very similar, or is there a whole group of people that you're seeing that they're like, wow, polymorphic ransomware now is writing its own code. I can't sleep at night. Is there anything different that you're seeing or hearing?
Great question. I think so right now I'm speaking to a lot of CISOs, CISOs, and CIOs. And at those levels, it's business risk. So the
Right,
technical risks, the security concerns are important. And I don't think they're changing. They're constantly changing. So
right.
there's new threat perspectives, there's new tactics and techniques, but I'm seeing a lot of business risk. So concerns over efficiency and automation, concerns over needing to downsize workforce or reduce cost. That's driven, and at the same time, I mean, those things are driven by financial concerns, and there's global shifts in that. But there's also the concern of I need to downsize my workforce or my overall cost. I need to improve automation, but I can't reduce security. So because these threats are
How do
shifting
you
so
do that?
quickly,
Right.
I still have to watch the door. I can't take the bouncer off the door. I need to watch what's going on. So I think that it's a perfect recipe for AI, for automation at scale. When you start talking to organizations that are extremely concerned about their workforce, are very concerned about being able to move more efficiently and not just continuing to add headcount and continuing to add tools. So we're kind of at a cusp, I think, in those spaces.
What are you seeing from the regulatory landscape? I mean, I'm here in the US where we basically can do whatever the heck we want. We have no regulations on anything. It's the Wild West. We will slap AI on anything, aka the fork. We have a couple different states that we're trying to regulate AI use, which would be very difficult to manage because how would a company do that, right? Because we don't operate in one state. None of us do. Even small businesses don't. So the federal government just recently kind of said, hey, hold off on that. We're going to be issuing, federal guidelines. And we do have NIST that came out in 2023, and this risk management framework for AI. That was helpful. It's a good guide. It's vague, but it's still a good guide. And obviously, the UK has, or the EU has their AI Act, which is pretty restrictive. But I mean, they lead the way in privacy. What is there anything in the region you're covering, or anything that you see out there that is really like, has it resonates with you? Like, is there somebody
Yeah,
that's really doing it well that you see, and you're like, we should really be, looking, modeling ourselves after the Netherlands version of it, or something like that, is what I'm asking about. I just did it a terrible way.
we love the Dutch. I'll say
Yeah, we
that
always do. They're pretty good.
the place we want to model after. Yeah. If you ever find yourself in a location prone to flooding, wear wooden shoes. I think that they're across this region at least, every country is doing it slightly differently. So I think that I've seen Singapore is doing some wonderful things. Australia is trying to really reach in that space. Japan, I was just out in Japan last week speaking to some of the regulators there. There's a move in a direction in that space. I don't think anybody has hit the nail on the head. And
Okay.
part of the problem is that regulation typically is not a leading indicator. And Australia is a bit different
100.
in that from a standpoint. Australia has put regulation out front and industry follows to some degree. You have the US, Canada, even the EU, where regulation was a lagging indicator of where it
Right.
was that bringing up the low end of that bell curve. I hope, I'll say it this way. I hope that regulation is not the line we're following because that's too late. Government does not move
Yeah,
as
I would
fast as
agree.
industry.
I would. Yeah.
That's what I yeah. I to me
Yeah.
I look
I
at
mean, but
FSAs. I look at
I'm reporting from the States, so here we're the kids in the back of the class. So long as we could bring our guns by our AI tools, we're fine. Like, we're
yeah.
not the we're not the poster children for leading the way here. I was just curious because you see a lot more than I see, so I was curious if there's a model out there that you're like, wow, this one's really good.
You know,
So
I still look to the
just not
private sector.
not not
I'll say
yet,
that
right? It's just not
no,
ripe
no,
yet.
and I don't think so.
Makes sense.
The industry I talk to most frequently for this space is banks. I find
Right.
banks and financial regulators are out in front in this space. They
They have to be.
to be
They
fair to
have to
them, they
be.
have the money to
Yeah.
do it, and they have the data that they're concerned about. So some of the banks in Australia are doing phenomenal things. Singapore,
Mhm.
the banking system and the regulators there are amazing, and I think that that's really where a lot of other industries are looking. What are the banks doing? What are financial regulators doing?
Yep.
And we'll follow behind. I think if we look at AI from a privacy lens, that's the starting point. Where are we
Makes
concerned
perfect sense.
about our data going? And let's build backwards from
Yep. Absolutely. What are you seeing in? Let's talk about AI deepfakes just for a little bit because I'm so fascinated by them. I will say I've seen them out in the wild. Believe it or not, I've come across some customers and some clients, even small businesses, who are experiencing it while they're trying to hire, like in the HR role, in the recruiting role, where they are interviewing developers and they don't have to live in their town. So this person is pretending to be, you know, Carol from Iowa. And in fact, it's, you know, Claude from Europe. You know what I mean? But they're deep fake. They've written the resume to be this perfect resume. It's too perfect. And then, the reason they're getting caught is their interview skills aren't that good, right? But the person that is showing up on video is, they said, just undetectable by the human eye. It's not bad. Like, it is, they sound right, they look right, there's nothing weird about the background. Is that, are CISOs talking about that globally? Like, are they concerned about this? Because it does fly in the face of what we believe to be true and not true. Well, we've all kind of grown up believing seeing is believing. Like, our court systems are based on eyewitness testimony. Like, everything is, that is the truth. And yet now it's not. We have to still verify it.
Yeah, it's that trust but verify.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the CISOs I'm talking to now are starting to look at this from the point of what they can do about it. They accept that it's there. It's what do I do next? I think
Right.
we used to get to a point where we would have this discussion to move your hand in front of your face, and there are tricks, right? The AI models cannot beat the tricks. They're getting so well designed, so advanced, so fast that the tricks don't work. Um, Most of the CISOs I talk to, it's about working with HR, working with your other departments to understand the risks, and being aware is half of it, right? If you have a notion that it could be there, then your brain will start to, that reticular activating system will start to twig on those things.
Right.
So I don't think there's a whole lot of technical tools that are going to put in place and perfect this. It's about the interviewer, the individual being better placed. And I've seen it myself with some of the organizations I've worked with, have experienced this during the HR process, where we see certain state actors using this as an access point to try to get data down the road, get access down the road. I
Yep.
think it's only going to increase. The most of what I see now is not full video interviews. It's a case where you're getting somebody who jumps on video for 10 seconds, looks convincing, and appears that they are who they say they are, and then they're like, oh, my camera's acting up, or the internet's not good enough, let me turn my video off. Video deepfakes are still a lot easier than video deepfakes. So that's
Yep.
the tendency I'm seeing right now, and that's one of those hinge points. Did you actually have a video interview with,
Right.
Carol from Iowa, or did
Right.
she suddenly go off video 3 seconds into your call?
Right.
So we're getting people used to those concepts. CISOs are definitely aware of it. I just don't think yet we've got the security tools that are moving efficiently in that space. So it's about
Correct.
awareness. It's understanding where the threats are in my industry, in my region, and then making my teams in all other areas of the business aware of that potential risk, that potential.
That's excellent. Let me ask you about vendor management and vendor risk. A lot of the data breaches this year have been supply chain, right? It is, we saw it years ago, the big Target breach here. It wasn't Target, it was the HVAC vendor, right? Like it's that flow down of all of your subcontractors need to have your level or a strong level, at least, of resilience. How should security teams kind of treat AI tools as vendors from a risk perspective? Are they having those conversations? Are they talking to you about that?
So, man, another great question. Third-party risk, supply chain
Thanks. I
risk,
used
it's
AI to come
not
up
going.
with that.
I was gonna
Hey,
say this sounds
hey,
like yeah,
sounds like
supply chain
smarter
risk is
question than Morrow could have thought of. You're like he doesn't really come up with this good a question usually. So I'm just teasing. No,
you're hit me with them. It's early morning.
yeah,
You
that's
know,
right. Sorry, I forgot about the time change.
so supply chain risk is at the tip of everybody's tongue
Always.
right now,
Yeah,
and
that's what I thought.
a lot of it. Yeah, the challenge that I'm seeing right now, regardless if it's supply chain and on a tooling perspective, a vendor tool, or a vendor who has access to your environment or access to your people. We're
Mhm.
seeing most threats don't break in; they walk in. They access
Right.
through credentials they've taken. Supply chain risk right now, the real challenge is getting ahead of it. Organizations that I saw last year, and I saw this when I was in the insurance industry too, that they were starting too late to start to look at their third party risk, and then looking at just scope and scale. Like,
Right.
we don't know who all of our vendors are. We don't know
Right.
who we're doing business with, and we don't necessarily know what access they have. Now, let's pull all this together in a big project and see who we're going to assess for risk on a annual or a biannual or once every 3 year basis, and the
Right.
system falls apart in year two. And so
Right.
most of what I'm chatting with CISOs about now is, how do you maintain that? So you
Right.
started a third party risk or supply chain risk program. How do you maintain that in year two and year three when those organizations you have to assess double and triple, and your insurance company also is asking for more? So
Right.
you built a third party risk program, and by year two, your broker, your insurer is asking for double the information, and
Mhm.
you collapse under your own weight. So I think this is another one of those spaces where how can I bring in AI if we add that risk still, how can I bring in AI tooling so that I can efficiently manage my third party risk while also assessing the risk of that AI tool. So
Right.
it's a
It's a
complex
multi-layer.
problem.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
but it's
is
one that
is
I think we
really
can't
getting
ignore.
yeah, is that one of the things you advise organizations on? Like on really getting ahead of your supply chain? Because I see so many organizations. I mean, I'm just telling you, like, if when I ask, I'm like, do you know who all of your vendors are? Like most leaders are like, I have no freaking idea. Like I know we have five that do this, we have three or four that do this, everything else, let alone what access they would have or what the state of their security is, right? And that's frightening.
Yeah. I think these are problems that we see across organizations at all size and all maturity, that there's shadow procurement as well. So, marketing needs to move faster. They want to run this project. So they reach out and find a vendor that they need. And finance needs a tool set, and IT is taking too long to approve it. So they just go out and pay for it on a company credit card. And I think getting ahead of your supply chain is again about making all business units aware of the risk. Once they're all aware of the risk, then you have to build an efficient process for managing and risk assessing each of those vendors, everyone in your supply chain. Yeah, I spend a lot of time speaking with CISOs and CROs, speaking with risk leaders about supply chain risk and how you can efficiently get in. I won't even say get in front of it, keep up with it. I see very few organizations that are in front of their supply chain risk. It's about how can I use automation to keep up with the growing risk
Right.
from my supply chain?
That's so interesting because there's really a lot of layers of shadow, right? There's the old adage of shadow technology, somebody bringing in a laptop, a bring your own device, right? It's being connected to the organization network. Now there's shadow AI, and it's a really good phrase about shadow vendors, right? Because that's so true. Marketing will go and engage there, and somebody else will go and engage here, procurement or shipping or logistics. And then when you think about it, well, some of these have more access than others. Who are they in the first place? Like to keep track of all of that is something that AI could be very beneficial to, actually, to help out an organization.
Well, and I think
Shocking.
it's also about so determining who your vendors are and where they are and what access they have. Then it's also about assessing risk. So when I looked at it, when I was in the insurance industry, one of the things we were looking at was what the risk level is. And a lot of organizations were
Right.
looking at the size of their spend in order to initially look at this. So what organization are we spending the most on in our supply chain,
Right.
because they're likely the riskiest? And the problem with that is that it's a false sense. It's a false narrative. Well, because I'm
It's not
spending the
even
most
true.
on
Right.
Amazon, then no, it ends up being this reverse order that I think that's where the AI tooling that I'm seeing in third party risk works really well. Like we're bringing out some third party risk tools that is about how can I efficiently assess my risk to nth party. So who are my
Right.
vendors working with that's pushing down the line? And I mean, yes, there's always going to be risks in the big firewall vendors, the big storage vendors, the cloud providers. But at scale, the problem is all those little vendors are still sitting in my environment, and I need to know who they're doing business with, because that's the risk I'm owning now. That HVAC company. I
Yeah.
still tell the story of Target because
Yeah.
they're that's a great one. Target was not thinking that this small regional HVAC vendor was
No.
gonna, make them story
Right.
carried. I think we're now to, what's it, 10 years later, 20 years later. It's amazing. Well, 10 years. That damn time flies. That you know they were probably thinking of their largest vendors, not their small,
Right.
regional store
Regional
vendors.
ones. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. Well, it's so interesting. Let me ask you, I know you're not in insurance anymore, but I heard the other day on a IT podcast or something, because I'm a dork, about insurance claims. At least I believe it was here in the US. Cyber insurance had paid out like right around 50%. And that was it, because of the way organizations are doing their applications, right? They're just searching for the lowest premium. They're not, oh, do you have MFA? Yeah, we have it on that one thing. Let's say we do, right? And no, that's not what they're asking. They're asking, do you have MFA on all of your systems, right? Things like that. That's a material, it's a material misstatement when you're doing your application. Are you aware, or does that come up in any of the conversations? I imagine it does to some degree. Are there any significant sightings or events that you've come across recently, about, like, I mean, the industry boomed for a while, and then so many of them went out of business or got out of that line of writing for obvious reasons. What are you seeing where you sit today compared to where you were?
So I now get plausible deniability now that I sit outside of that
Right.
industry. So it's a wonderful place to be. Cyber insurance it gets a bad rap. Okay, it is there for a reason, but it should be the front line. It should be the last line. And I
Correct.
think that most of the conversations I have with CISOs now are their touch point with cyber insurance is once a year when risk or when their insurance leaders come to them to fill out an application or sit through an interview. And
Okay.
so because it's such a small touch point of their overall business responsibility, there's often a lack of understanding of what can we do, what are we doing, and I hear that insurance doesn't pay out. It's difficult. I don't think insurers have it completely figured out as to what the risks are. I don't think that the questionnaire model is an efficient way to do things, because I
Great.
remember I would see the question of, do you use firewalls?
Like,
Do you
yeah.
use MFA? Like, what? Like, oh, my favorite is
Right.
still, and now I sit on this side of the fence, is, do you use cyber threat intelligence? It's like, okay,
Right.
not all are the same. Like, so
Right.
I think that the problem is those questionnaires, 15, 20 pages long, still just scratch the surface of the risks. And insurers often just add another question when they see a breach. Let's add this question in because that's a risk, without understanding what that means. So you have insurance people speaking at this angle and CISO speaking at this angle, and neither of them understands the other.
Right.
So it's definitely a problem. I think that what I speak to insurers about now, and I get the joy of speaking to them externally now, is they need to manage their book of business the way that your average organization manages their supply chain risk. Like,
Right.
as an insurer, how are you looking at companies you insure any differently than company ABC looks at all of their vendors and looks at all of their supply
Right.
chain? And I think that
It's a
that
great
is
analogy.
maybe a shift in the
That's a
model.
great analogy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we don't, if ABC Corp sent out 15-page questionnaires to all of their supply chain, they would
Yeah.
expect to get inaccurate information back.
Right.
And we need to get to a point where everybody's expecting more realistic answers. And I think the payouts will match that. I think is the
Yeah.
direction we'll go.
That's great. Well, as we wrap up, my friend, what is on the horizon for you other than the holidays with your family?
Yeah, it is. I mean, 2026 is a big year. I think that cyber threat intelligence for me is a passion project. What I'm getting the chance to do now is really talk to leaders about CTI at core. So cyber threat intelligence at the core of their program. And that's probably the biggest shift I'm helping leaders position. That understanding that to move faster, to really point your defenses when we go back to that, soldiers at the border, how can we use threat intelligence? How can we use AI tools and autonomous tools in a way that you can position your risk program better? And that's the stuff I love. I
Absolutely.
enjoy looking at what threat actors are doing, But that is really my edutainment piece, right? The threat actor shifts are always unique, and it's novel, and it's fun as
And
an
they have
external
cool
party to
names.
read
They
about,
have
right?
cool names. Yeah. They have cool
How can you
names.
not
We
love
could make good
that? Yeah.
characters for a carousel from
Yeah,
them.
but it
That's
comes
always
down to
fun.
me to efficiency. How can we as an organization, and how can we with our entire supply chain work more efficiently to be more secure and scale? And that's really what I'm now getting hyped up about. It's going to be a great year coming up.
That's fantastic. Well, we will watch for you and we will have links to your contact information. I encourage everybody to follow you on LinkedIn and connect with you. You always put out really interesting, great stories and really interesting um, things that business leaders can really get. It's always in plain terms. Everybody can understand it. It's not overly technical at all. So I always appreciate that. Dumbing it down for people like me always helps. So I appreciate all you do, and I wish you and your family wonderful holidays, my friend. I mean that.
Happy holidays to you. Happy holidays to your listeners, and thanks so much for having me. It's I love what I do, and I think that that's at the core of it. It's a lot easier to do good work when you love what you're doing.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you so much, buddy. We'll see you.